Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Market Bites. I hope everyone is doing well wherever you are listening to this. I'm joined by Neja Molt. Neja, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Sam. It's actually one of the busiest week in earnings season. So much is happening and we have lots to talk about. What about you? All good?
Yeah, all good. And you're right. There's a lot to talk about. If it was just earnings that were happening this week, nothing else, it would still be a busy one. And then you
Yeah.
chuck in what's going on in the world of commodities and gold and silver to be specific. That would be enough. And then you talk about Trump and anything he says or tweets or posts on Truth Social, that would be enough as well. And then you've got the new Fed chair and you've got everything else in between that's going on. So yeah, a lot to talk about. And actually, I'm going to make a conscious effort now to post a little bit more on the etoro platform. I mean, I talked about a company called Wise just to get people's opinions about it, really. And a really good conversation has taken place this morning or early afternoon, depending what time it is now, 2 o'clock. And I'm going to do that a bit more, and we'll definitely incorporate some polls and stuff like that that we can then talk about it in the podcast. So do check all of that out. I'll put our eToro usernames in the bio, so people can always stay up to date with anything that we talk about and how it can lead into this podcast. But yeah, how have you been other than that? Busy week?
Yeah, very busy. Actually, I mean, there are so many earnings. I'm just checking earnings calendar, and so many of the big companies are reporting. So I'm super excited for those. For me, they are released around 10 p.m. So it's
Yeah.
always before going to bed, checking out the earnings and what it looks like after market. So yeah, it's always one of the busiest weeks in the season, and it's super exciting because you never know where the move is going up and down. And we already saw one of the moves. For example, we saw, I mean, insurance yesterday that
Yeah.
was due to different reasons. You did trader talks about that, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean that will be live on the podcast already in YouTube for people to check out. But yeah, I discussed four health insurance stocks, and they all had some pretty poor days yesterday, didn't they? You know, down. I think United Health was down near 20% at its worst. And the point I made in the video was, if you had if we had had a discussion about health insurance stocks on Friday, last Friday, it would have been positive. They'd all bounced a lot off their lows. Technically look really good, but then it's just one of those things where a headline can come out and can really change the course of the stock. And now I ask people the question: is this time to have a bit of a discount and get back in dollar cost average? Is it time to be patient? Of course, people got to make their own minds up. But yeah, we fast forward 7 days, there'll be something else that we talk about.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So on this podcast, we'll go into the earnings, the big tech earnings, of course. I think that's very important. You've got four massive companies free reporting tonight, one tomorrow, but a lot in between all of that as well. And then I wanted to discuss whether commodities are taking Bitcoin's shine away at the moment, because Bitcoin has been struggling a lot recently, and I want to know whether people think, and we can obviously discuss it, whether that is part of the reason why maybe Bitcoin has struggled a little bit because focus is elsewhere. But look, Neja, let's get into it then. You know, big tech is about to report, as we mentioned just now. What, from an investor point of view, do we want to hear?
I mean, yeah, everyone is talking about spending, and all previous earnings seasons were about spending. And yes, just for those who are not following earnings calendar that often today, there are Microsoft, Meta, Tesla
Mm,
reporting, and tomorrow Apple, and there are more earnings following next week. Alphabet is reporting next week. And yeah, past earnings seasons were all about spending, how much these companies are spending over AI. But I think that now investors are focusing also on some other things, or they will focus on, at least for me, if I talk from my perspective. I think that they want to hear something more about demand. Like, is demand around AI real? Are you just spending on those things, or is demand really there? Because when executives talk about capacity and long delivery times or customers waiting in line, that sounds bullish for that stock, right? But there is also a case when they could start shifting towards spacing and moderation, and these types of wording sign that demand could be cooling down and the cycle might be maturing or be closer to the peak. And this is something that I think we don't want to hear, especially if you are bullish around these stocks. Then there are clearly costs, because spending on AI is not that exciting anymore, I think, because yeah, of course, all these companies are spending lots of their money on AI. And I think that on this stage, it's really the question whether margins are being damaged for much longer than expected. Because again, that is why wording is so important on these calls, because escalating everything can sound great for growth, but also scary if you think about profitability. On the other hand, if they say that they will start optimizing, that can sound reasonable, and it can also be heard as defensive, and especially if it's not backed up by numbers. And also, I think that we want to hear a lot about credibility, because this earnings season is really about trust. Can management explain if that kind of spending really makes sense for their specific business model? Because, for example, if Microsoft, from my perspective, needs to show that Azure demand is turning into something profitable, and they want to see execution and not just promises for the following quarters. And yeah, I think that those are the things that we'll be watching. But nevertheless, if we just take a look at performance of these stocks this year, I just checked out before Smart Portfolio on eToro, Magnificent Seven stocks, and they are lagging behind SP 500 so far. They're up like a bit less than 1%. So I bet that these earnings can push them higher or much lower.
Yeah, bring it on. Bring it on, I say.
Yeah.
As you mentioned there, Tesla, Microsoft, Meta, all reporting tonight. It is Wednesday the 28th, and then Apple tomorrow. I was looking yesterday on Polymarket, and I'm sure a load of people now have heard about this and these prediction markets, and they can be quite a good way, I guess, of gauging sentiment. I think with anything like this, you always have to take it as a pinch of salt. Just because something is priced in, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But
Yeah.
of course, if something is very much priced in and the opposite happens, that's when you get a decent sized move. So for the traders out there, or even the investors, I guess, I was just looking, and Tesla, they've got it down as a 21% chance that it's going to beat estimations, which I thought was really low, to be honest. And if we actually go back to the 22nd of January, which is only 6 days ago, it was up at 64%. So you can make of that what you will, but I guess as we got closer to the date today, chance of Tesla beating expectations a little bit lower. But then I'm reading into that as well, if they do beat, or they, the report isn't that bad, there's a lot of room to go to the upside. And as you mentioned, these Mag 7 stocks have been lagging behind. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast already. Just for the record, Microsoft 91% chance, Meta 85, Apple 94. So very much expected to beat on their earnings. But again, we'll have to wait and see. But I feel this is a big and important earnings season. Whatever happens over the next couple of weeks, it can be saved by Nvidia anyway, which always report right at the very end. But if we talk about just these specific companies, these big tech ones, what would count as sort of real AI monetization progress in 2026?
Yeah, of course. I mean, everything is around AI, and those earnings are basically setting stage for Nvidia. That is always one of the last companies reporting. But yeah, you mentioned the numbers. I think that, yeah, I believe that we could see some beats, like some really good numbers. But it just like speaking for myself, like I am looking forward to earnings calls, what they will say, actually.
Mm.
I think that really what they will have to say will matter much more than actual numbers, especially if they won't be a really like a huge beat or a huge miss. I think that wording will matter more. But yeah, if we take a look at those specific companies and how prove that AI is really working for them looks like. I mean, for Microsoft, I already mentioned a bit, but I think that a real progress is when AI clearly make their customers spend more on their products that they already use. Because I think that Azure still needs to grow, even if it gets bigger. But one of the real tests will be Copilot. And I think that this has to move to daily work, because if Copilot becomes something that companies, their customers cannot imagine their work working without, I mean, that is really monetization. So I think that
Yep.
will be very important for them. But for example, for Meta, monetization, it's much more straightforward because AI needs to make ads basically work better for their customers. So better targeting, better results for advertising, and also ideally higher prices for ads. And this is the proof that for Meta that AI is really lifting up their ad revenue and margins at the same time. Then we also have Amazon,
Mm.
which is all around Amazon Web Services. And if we see faster growth without hurting profits, monetization means that customers are not just testing those AI tools, but also committing real work and signing longer cloud contracts with Amazon, and all of that includes AI. So I think that all of those things will just be a proof that AI is actually working, helping their customers, and maybe that they can spend more money on that. And I think that 2026 won't be essentially about who builds the most AI, but actually who turns this AI into spending and leverage and who gets the most out of it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to not necessarily this time tomorrow. I guess 10, like you said, 9 p.m. for me, 10 p.m. for you, and just 30 minutes after that, let's see the reactions of these stocks. Let's see those earnings calls. Let's see how price reacts a few hours after. I think it'd be very, very telling. I mean, listen, the S&P 500 today hit 7,000 for the first time in history. The Nasdaq's hitting an all-time high. Equity markets across the globe are doing, extremely well. One thing that can change that is, big drops in these companies. They have a big weighting on the major stock indices. So, not just in America, but the world indices as well, the world ETF. So, yeah, it feels very important 36 hours from now. And you've got the biggest companies in the world, or some of the biggest companies in the world reporting. Get through this hurdle, and you have to favour the moves to the upside for riskier assets in certainly the equity space. These companies don't deliver. You have shocks, and AI worries start again. Then the market will struggle to go higher. So very important for those new to markets, to those more experienced. This is something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. But before we discuss Bitcoin, we haven't discussed Bitcoin in a
Yeah.
while. There is a real story around in commodities space, because I mean silver prices this year. I never imagined that something like that would happen. I just took a look at the chart, up more than 50% in a year, and this volatility that we are seeing in the past days, I mean, that's crazy. So I just wanted to ask you what's like your latest views on what everything that's happening in commodity space, really.
It's crazy. I don't think anyone really saw this coming and believed it was going to happen to the extent. I completely understand at many points last year people being long gold, being long silver, and people did very well. A lot of people would have been out this market way before this last push that we've seen. And to your first point there, we haven't talked about Bitcoin for a while, have we? We literally just haven't. It hasn't really been doing too much, whereas commodities have done. Gold hitting record high after record high. I think it's on its way to 5,300 at the moment. Silver trading at like 113, 114, 115. By the time this goes live, by the time it's tomorrow, it could be 120, or it could be below 100. It is a volatile commodity, asset at the moment. You're seeing days where in the morning it could be up 13, 14%, and then it drops 13, 14%. And that is tough, by the way, for anyone in any market. So for those that are new, don't feel like you have to get involved in this. You've got demo accounts, you've got other ways of getting involved, because this is not a normal market at the moment for gold or silver. And yeah, it's absolutely, fascinating. I mean, these aren't necessarily, I guess that, well, they're scarce assets, but it's not finite. Whereas something like Bitcoin would be, there's however many 21 million Bitcoins, there's however much of gold. It's not finite there. But with silver and gold, there has been demand. And when we talked about months ago, we just come up with 4 reasons why gold might be going higher. You chuck in things like the central bank buying, which has been extraordinary, really, breaking sort of records there. One of the main things, and one thing that could really give it another leg at the moment, is the weaker dollar. Trump coming out yesterday and being like, it's just finding its feet. It's not that weak. I'm not too bothered about it. These are things that you say if you're not too worried about it going lower. And weaker dollar helps commodities, especially when they're priced in dollars. So that's naturally going to help things. Then you've had all the geopolitical situations over the last sort of few years as well, and those safe haven flows. And it's been a great sort of recipe fundamentally for those commodities to go higher. And if you think about silver, it is used in things as well, industrial metal. It's used in defense equipment. If we think about European defense stocks, right, over the last 14 months or so, done very well, and even American ones as well. And you think silver, it's also going to be used in AI infrastructure as well. And just around the globe, we're starting to build things again. So commodities should do well. There is demand there. There's obviously the store value for gold, silver to an extent, but there's the utility case. And then we think about copper, which is also near highs as well, lagging behind. A lot of people are talking about how that might be the one where people take profit in gold and silver to look for copper and look for copper related stocks. I was looking at a few copper related stocks on, what day is it today? Wednesday, so it would have been yesterday. And loads of them are sort of near their all-time highs at the moment, or getting very close, or looking like they're about to break out. So yeah, it's always a worry, I guess, when everyone talks about something, in this case copper, and like it's going to go higher, because that's always when you think, well, it's not. But it does feel like there's room for it to go. But yeah, when you think as well, platinum's done very well. There's low supply, there's increased demand. This is just things that help, and all of these are used in, or some of them are using, electric vehicles, AI infrastructure, and those are things that aren't going to stop at the moment. But more markets are very forward looking. So yeah, it's been an incredible time, and we have our analyst WhatsApp group, don't we? And Gil, our chief investment officer, was talking about oil quietly going about its business on course of 6 positive weeks in a row. Yeah, it's fascinating, and I also do think no one knows when it's going to finish this recent run. To time a market, whether it be a top or a bottom, is very, very tough. You'd like to think people that are still long from a long time ago have taken profit as it's gone up, because you're seeing in silver, you're seeing moves where it drops 15%. Eventually it could drop 30-40%, and you want to have made something out of this trade. So yeah, Neja, a fascinating time.
I mean, it's a very difficult time to enter to those things. Everyone is speaking about silver and gold, and how both of them are rallying. But if you just remember a year ago, or even less, I think no one was talking about that. And I think this case is just a good time to remember for everyone investing that it's very little time is needed to switch for something to be very popular to something like no one talks about, and everyone thinks it's maybe undervalued, but they don't see a real opportunity in that yet. But that happened to silver, and like right now, it's one of the hottest stories on the market, but it's worth remembering that it can very quickly switch to something else. We will be talking about Bitcoin constantly again. Uh, um, what do you think? Do you think that what has happened to gold and to AI stocks is that has impacted what is happening to Bitcoin price or not really?
Yeah, I feel so. I mean, if it's like with anything, right? You know, even for people that pay attention to like the top 20 songs in the world in whatever country, the most popular ones are at the top, and the ones that aren't that popular aren't, and it just goes in cycles, right? And Bitcoin is one of those ones where I feel like it's just not at the front of people's attention at the moment, and you think what is, well, gold, silver, commodities in general, all that focus is there. It's like this shiny, it's not new, of course, they've been around for generations and way longer than Bitcoin, but it's popular at the moment. It's the buzzword. It's all-time highs after all-time highs. People are getting involved. And also AI, right, has been this new, well, it's not, again, it's not new, is it? I mean, things like Siri have been around for so long, but AI and AI stocks, like, since I guess ChatGPT was launched, it gained a lot of public attention, became super, popular there, and many AI related companies since that moment have done incredibly well. I mean, just look at your Nvidias and so on. They've just been remarkable, and Palantirs and Oracles and all of these kind of stocks have done incredibly well, and the focus is there. And then when you think about what's going on in Bitcoin, last year it went to 125,000, by the way. Like if you think about the low from 2022, sort of October, November time, is it was lower across a lot of markets, wasn't it? After 2022 was a tough year, but what an opportunity was to buy there. Bitcoin from that moment, bear in mind, and that's not even 4 years, it's called 3.5 years, it's up 715%, right? That's, remarkable move in such a short period. So the attention has just gone elsewhere, it feels like. And it will have its turn again. Like you said, we'll be talking about Bitcoin again in the future. And there is an argument to be said, once the gold and silver train runs out, that money will flow into, I should say, into your Bitcoins, into your Ethereums, and it will start to do a little bit better. Ultimately, from a technical point of view, whenever we've had a webinar that I do with Lale, our global market analyst, on a Monday for our Diamond Club members, I talk about 97,000 being incredibly important. Was to the upside just recently, hit it pretty perfectly and sold off. If we get above that, things look a little bit different for sure. But at the moment, it's sort of, you could argue it's been in a range really since early November. It hasn't really done anything. And maybe it's just a case of being patient, for those dollar cost averaging in, or identifying areas, like every sort of $10,000 it drops, for example, that's a place you want to buy. It will have its day again. Bitcoin isn't finished. We all know that. But there is just something a little bit more shiny out there at the moment that's taking people's attention, right? I think that's how it is. And I guess, Nezha, if we look at these earnings and say next quarter's earnings and they're really bad for AI, let's just say that, people are going to forget about AI for a while, aren't they? And they'll go into that next thing. Money flows to risk opportunities. And at the moment, Bitcoin and crypto in general, it just feels like we need something else to really kick it on. And it's just not there right now.
Yeah, you said that very well. It's just not in the focus right now, but
No.
it's still out there. And it's just a matter of time when it will be back and we will be talking about it constantly. And it's same with gold and silver. We haven't talked about them much, but now they're under the spotlight, and it's all that we are discussing everywhere. And it's same with AI. When ChatGPT became live, when was that, in 2022, it really became like, it was out there for the public and it became popular. Everyone switched to AI stocks, started looking like which companies are working for AI and so on. And it's a matter of time when this will also be not that popular anymore and focus will be somewhere else. So it's worth adapting as an investor, maybe keep a strategy the same, but always adapting. Where are you looking for opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll be here, everyone, to guide you through it along the way, all the ups and the downs, because there will be downs. Of course, there will,
Of course.
along the way. But Neja will be back next week. I think Brett will be joining us as well. He's had a couple of weeks off, living the dream somewhere, I'm sure, on holiday. We'll catch up with him. But Neja, until then, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you then.
You too, Sam. Bye bye.
Take care, everyone. See you soon.